eating Satan, Hubbard's word for the spirit. The OT levels are supposedly so powerful that you can die of pneumonia if you're exposed to them unprepared. It costs around £5,000 to take OT3, which contains Hubbard's cosmology. The Church has tried to keep this material secret, but former senior Scientologists in America have leaked it, and versions have been published. This is an outline of the story.
75 million years ago, this planet was called Tigyac. There were 90 planets in this sector called the Galactic Confederation.
This is part of the text of a Hubbard lecture.
They had elected a fellow by the name of Zemu to the supreme ruler, and they were about to unelect him. And he took the last moments he had in office to really goof the floof. Zemu decided to take radical measures to overcome the population problem. Beings were captured on other planets and flown to locations near 10 volcanoes or more on Earth. H-bombs were dropped on the volcanoes, destroying the bodies of the beings who, as Thetans, attached themselves to one another as clusters. A revolt followed of the loyal officers against Zemu. Zemu was locked up in an electronic mountain fortress and remains there still. Since that time, beings born on this planet have had clusters of Thetans attached to their bodies. OT3 can run out these clusters and cause them to leave us and reincarnate as individuals.
After hours of expensive auditing, you are rid of the body Thetans attached to you. You may then acquire psychic powers, move objects at a distance, and have out-of-body experiences. If you find you can't, then you must take the course again, for another £5,000.
In a letter to his third wife, Mary Sue, when Hubbard was in Las Palmas during 1967 at the inception of the Sea Org, he stated,
"I'm drinking lots of rum and popping pinks and grays."
Also at the Armstrong trial, where the affirmations were introduced, a letter by Hubbard to his first wife was revealed, the last sentence of which declared,
"I do love you even if I used to be an opium addict."
Do you use drugs in any way?
No, never. No drugs.
Hubbard was strongly against drugs for other people in later policy, although he himself consumed huge amounts of drugs and alcohol during most of his life. We also know that in the early days there is plenty of evidence that he experimented with auditing under the influence of drugs, speed for instance, and he used drugs to make his own children pliant and controllable, phenobarbital-laced chewing gum for instance. Later, he was most strongly against psychedelic drugs like marijuana and LSD, perhaps because they have very strong anti-hypnotic tendencies and have the potential to bounce people out of consensus trance.
if you were talking to an Army colonel, what would you talk about?
I couldn't talk to any Army colonel I ever saw.
Fine, thank you. All right. If you were talking to an Army colonel about that, what would you say exactly?
I would tell him he's too stupid to find his own balls.
Fine, thank you. And if you were talking to the president, what would you talk about?
Drug hysteria.
Fine, thank you. And what would you say exactly?
What are you trying to do? Turn America into a nation of rats? Our pioneer ancestors would piss in their graves.
Despite Ron's love of both illicit drugs and potent pharmaceuticals, Scientologists are avowedly anti-drug. That is except for the cigarettes they smoke in imitation of the Great Ron and their use of booze and coffee. They even have a drug rehab branch, Narconon, which critics accuse them of using as a front group for collecting new and unsuspecting membership through.
Everywhere, Scientology reaches the public through its front organizations, some of them misleadingly named. Some are pressure groups campaigning on issues like mental health, which seems to obsess Scientologists. Others are controversial campaigns aimed at school children. And Scientology has others to help the unfortunate, like ex-offenders, and particularly drug users.
Narconon is a drug rehabilitation center. It's a front group for Scientology. It's designed to help people get off drugs, which it does successfully, but then it converts people from that into Scientology. They're taken off drugs. They're put onto a program to help them do better in life. The program is basically Scientology processing or training, and from there they are indoctrinated, and from there they're converted to a Scientologist.
And how many of those former drug addicts become Scientologists?
Anywhere from 50 to 75%.
Scientology-supported drug and literacy programs are multiplying around the country.
I'd like people to know that the activities of the church are helping millions of people around the world every day. There are a lot of people who have found something that helps them, and that help is available to anybody who would like to have it.
Scientology says the programs which use books written by Hubbard are secular. Skeptics call them recruitment fronts that hide their ties to the church.
We can become a drug rehabilitation program. We've got nothing to do with religion. We become pious priests. You're threatening my freedom of religion. We can become educational programs. Oh, we're just here to help your son learn to read. We can become all those things, but really all it is just one master plan to infiltrate all of these areas according to Hubbard's doctrine, and you become whatever it needs to become to protect it and infiltrate it and take it over.
Narconon, a drug rehab program with ties to Scientology, has recently come under scrutiny.
Scientology was collecting money from local school boards and also collecting money from corporations and businesses and using that money to finance their lectures in the schools, which promoted the Purification Rundown, which is a religious practice in the Church of Scientology.
Narconon recently set up shop inside the Ensenada State Prison, a Mexican penitentiary where inmates have easy access to heroin. The program, run by Joe Domingo, son of famed tenor Placido Domingo, utilizes Hubbard's drug technology to help prisoners kick drugs. Inmates help build saunas at the prison in order to utilize Narconon's Purification Rundown.
I was a heroin addict, and I had a long-term heroin addiction and a problem with substance abuse, and went to jail 3 times, tried other programs, almost died, basically, and the Narconon program saved my life.
Despite the church's involvement in these social programs, critics still say the motives are sinister.
Narconon was started by convict and drug addict William Bennett in the mid-1960s. It claims to be a rehabilitation program for alcoholics and other drug addicts, and at different times and in different places has gained state support. Hubbard's interest in the group may have been inspired in part by Crowley's first published novel in 1922, The Diary of a Drug Fiend, a detailed account of drug addiction and the drug experience. It tells the story of a man and woman who fall madly in love and